The rain poured heavily that evening, drumming a relentless rhythm on the roof of the cheap roadside motel. Claire adjusted the baby carrier on her shoulder, clutching the few bags she could carry in one hand while holding her 6-month-old daughter, Emma, close with the other. Her eyes, red from days of crying, flicked over the flickering neon sign that read, "Sunset Inn." It wasn't glamorous, but it was all she could afford after signing the divorce papers just the day before. Her world had crumbled, 8 years of marriage reduced to a few signatures and a cold handshake in a courtroom. And now, this was her new beginning. A motel room with chipped paint, one creaky bed, and no clear idea of what tomorrow held. She checked in silently, nodding at the tired-looking woman behind the desk, who handed her a key without much fuss. The room was small, but it was dry and warm. Claire laid Emma gently on the bed and sat beside her, letting out a shaky sigh. She had no one to turn to, no family nearby, no real friends left after years of being isolated in a toxic marriage. All she had was the baby, and in that moment, the little girl's peaceful sleep became Claire's only anchor. In the room next door, however, another kind of silence prevailed. Jacob Lawson, a 42-year-old tech entrepreneur known for building a billion-dollar company from nothing, sat alone with a glass of scotch in his hand. The world saw him as a successful, stoic genius. But inside, he was deeply broken. 2 years had passed since his wife passed away in a tragic accident. Since then, he had withdrawn from everyone, selling off parts of his company and moving aimlessly between cities, staying in modest places like this motel, not because he had to, but because he couldn't bear the emptiness of his mansion back in the city. That night, he couldn't sleep. He heard the baby crying through the thin wall and sighed, not in frustration but in unexpected comfort. It reminded him of the life he once dreamed of having with his wife. A child they never had. A family they never got to build. The next morning, Claire stepped out, hair messy and eyes puffy from lack of sleep, trying to calm Emma who had been fussy all night. She looked tired but determined. As she walked past Jacob, who was sitting outside his door with a cup of coffee, she offered a polite nod. He nodded back, silently observing the quiet strength in her posture. Over the next few days, they crossed paths more frequently. At first, it was just awkward nods. Then came a few short words. Claire didn't open up easily, but there was something about Jacob's gentle presence, something that made her feel safe without understanding why. He never pried, never offered empty advice. Just a steady, calm existence next door. One morning, Emma started crying louder than usual, and Claire, at her wit's end, stepped out with tears in her eyes. Jacob, already sitting with his usual morning coffee, stood up. "Need a hand?" he asked, voice low and kind. Claire hesitated. I'm just so tired. She's been crying all night and I don't know what to do anymore." Without overstepping, he said, "Sometimes, they just need a change of energy." "May I?" She looked surprised but handed him the baby cautiously. Emma, remarkably, stopped crying almost instantly as Jacob held her. Claire stared in disbelief. "She likes you," she said, her voice trembling. Jacob gave a sad smile. "I've never held a baby before." From that moment on, something shifted. Their interactions became more frequent. He brought her breakfast from the nearby diner. She shared stories of her past, how she had dreamed of being a teacher before her marriage devoured her identity. He listened intently, occasionally opening up about his late wife and the love they once shared. Over time, Claire started noticing things. How Jacob seemed to be in places at the right time, offering help without making her feel pitied. How he watched over Emma like a guardian. And how he never once made her feel like she had to impress him. Still, she didn't know who he really was. He wore simple clothes, drove a regular car, and never spoke of money or status. Claire assumed he was just a kind, quiet man with a painful past. One afternoon, when Emma fell asleep on Jacob's chest while they sat on a bench outside the motel, Claire looked at him differently. "You're a mystery," she said. Jacob laughed softly. "That's not a bad thing, I hope." She shook her head. "No, just rare." A week later, Claire got a call she had been dreading. Her temporary job offer had been rescinded due to budget cuts. She broke down in her room that night, overwhelmed by the pressure. Jacob found her sitting on the steps, arms around her knees, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this," she whispered. "Yes, you can," he said, sitting beside her. "No money, no job, no home, I'm failing her." "You're not failing," he said firmly. "You're surviving, and that's already brave." She looked at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "Why are you being so kind to me?" You barely know me. He hesitated, then spoke, maybe because I know what it's like to feel lost. And maybe because I see someone who deserves more than what life has given her. She stared at him for a long moment, then asked quietly, who are you really? Jacob paused, then answered truthfully. My name is Jacob Lawson. I started a tech company years ago. Made more money than I ever needed. But when my wife died, none of it mattered anymore. I've been running from that emptiness ever since. Claire was stunned. The quiet, gentle man next door was a millionaire. But it wasn't the wealth that shook her, it was that he had chosen to live simply, humbly, and alone. I never would have guessed, she whispered. I didn't want to be known for that, he replied. I just wanted to feel human again. In the silence that followed, Claire reached out and took his hand. No words were spoken, but something powerful passed between them. An understanding, a connection. Over the next few weeks, Jacob offered to help her, not with handouts but with opportunity. He connected her to someone he knew who ran a preschool. Claire, with her natural warmth and care, was offered a position almost instantly. With a steady job, she could finally breathe. Eventually, they moved out of the motel, not together, but not far apart either. Claire found a small apartment nearby, and Jacob helped with the deposit anonymously. Their bond grew slowly, carefully. There was no rush, no grand gestures. Just real, honest companionship. One evening, a year later, Jacob walked into the small preschool where Claire now worked. Emma, now walking and giggling, ran up to him calling, Jakey. As he scooped her into his arms, Claire watched from the doorway, her heart full. He turned to her. Dinner with me tonight, she smiled. Always. This wasn't the story of a millionaire sweeping a struggling woman off her feet. It was the story of two broken souls who found comfort in their shared pain. A baby who bridged a gap between grief and hope. And a love that bloomed not from wealth or romance, but from kindness, healing, and second chances. Sometimes, life doesn't change in grand gestures or perfect plans. Sometimes, it starts with a cry in the night, a knock on a wall, a borrowed smile. And from that, something extraordinary can grow.